Yeah.
We have 3 more minutes, so feel free to chat and
I
go back.
apologize for this typos.
Oh, that's all right. You know, some of those are things I want to say. I mean, I like, you know, we all have our,
Yeah, that's
you know, see, I would say Ohio Rainy Day Fund. So they're minor things. Reduce. I can't help it. I'm a
questions like that.
professor.
Yeah. Well, what do you teach?
Political science. I mean, I'm always like editing and tinkering with prose.
Yeah,
Are you in political science?
I'm an economics major
Oh, that's good.
for the business college. So I'm a business major, yeah.
That's good.
Business econ, yep.
Great.
Just passed
Have
it.
you ever had Harold Winter as a professor in econ?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm only a sophomore.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm still doing the business cluster classes.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
What do you want to do then? Like the
I have a double major in marketing, so I want to start.
marketing?
Yeah, maybe move somewhere else, public sector later on.
Okay.
But time will tell.
I had both of them in class. John. Let's see.
Did you have a Missy?
What's that?
Did you have Missy? The
No, I haven't.
CR, okay.
Yeah. I've had other college clubs, but I haven't had this.
She's a business major too.
Is she?
Yeah.
You know Anna Lippincott from the Republican side?
No.
Oh, okay. She was here 3 years ago, and I knew her really well. And she works in the State House now
Oh, that's awesome.
with Larry Householder.
Oh, awesome. I work on a lot of his candidates' campaigns.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she started with him, and I know she opened up her own little sort of firm too. So yeah.
It's an interesting segment of Ohio politics.
Yeah.
When I say that. Other household.
Where are you from in Ohio?
I'm from Northeast Ohio, Akron area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law and her husband just moved to Massillon.
Okay, yeah.
So,
I campaigned a bit out there. Yeah, you know who Christina Wagner is?
no, I don't.
Okay, yeah. I was close with her.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's kind of different. You know, last time it was an open seat.
Oh, yeah.
More,
Wish we had a big room.
pretty good.
Pretty cool.
Pretty good. Yeah. Certainly decent. Oh, here's something I wanted to check on.
Yep.
Hey, John, is this right? In keeping with this goal, you can talk with the candidates following the formal presentation? That was in my script. In keeping with this goal, an opportunity for question and answer with the
I'm writing that.
No,
No, that wouldn't.
That's not right.
that can't be right? That might
just
be-
ideas, including.
I'll just go here. I'll just take it out, okay?
Yeah.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, I don't know why that was.
Okay, maybe that's part of some of, I don't know.
How big do you old?
Huh?
How big do you old?
I probably wasn't half of that. 'Cause I've been working on this for. Oh, wait, do you have a coin? You got a coin toss.
Yeah, I do.
We're not, we're not saying this, right?
No.
There's no Q&A with, yeah, okay.
There's no
I'm
answer.
glad I remembered that.
What kind of coin do you want?
I didn't wanna.
Yeah.
Make sure you get that. That's the lucky coin.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you have a fancy one, it's probably some lucky coin.
I have a lot of fancy coins.
You know, the bad thing about this race, this is a race where like both candidates are really good. It's kind of too bad, like letting both candidates win.
All right.
Uh-huh.
Jay's gonna do opening statement first.
Okay.
So who's first, Jay?
Yeah. Should I call him Representative Jay Edwards? I think I should.
That's
All
her.
right, everyone can take their seats for me. Get started. Okay, so thank you all for coming to Student Senate's 94th State House District Debate for the 2018 election. My name is Maddie Sloat. I'm a senior studying political communication, and I'm also the president of the Student Senate. It's my honor and privilege to introduce the event tonight. It's not every day that we get the opportunity to see our democracy at work and meet our potential representatives right here in Athens, Ohio. Tonight, we will hear from two candidates, both alumni of Ohio University, and learn about their vision to improve the lives of both students and community members around Athens and the surrounding counties. During this divided time in our nation's history, it's imperative that we participate in civil, informative discourse so we, the people, can determine the best representative for our community. The questions tonight were created and approved by the College Republicans and the College Democrats. Thank you to both organizations, and especially to Bailey Williams of the College Democrats and Missy Padola of the College Republicans, to organizing this debate and engaging students in our political process. A special thank you to Student Senate's Governmental Affairs Commission, and especially to John Slosher for their hard work in putting this event together. Now I will introduce our candidates. First, we have the incumbent, Representative Jay Edwards, the Republican candidate and hailing from Nelsonville. Mr. Edwards was born and raised in Southeast Ohio. He is a graduate of Nelsonville York High School, excelling in the classroom and in sports. He earned a scholarship to Ohio University, where he received his Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics. Today, Representative Edwards lives in Nelsonville and works as a realtor. He is a member of the Farm Bureau, the Nelsonville Rotary, the Chambers of Commerce in Athens, Nelsonville, Belcrete, Meigs County, and Marietta, and the National Rifle Association. Next, we have the challenger the state representative position, Taylor Sappington, the Democratic candidate from Nelsonville as well. Councilman Sappington is a small business owner, a Lyft driver, and a server at Texas Roadhouse. He is a proud graduate of Nelsonville York High School and Ohio University. Growing up, Councilman Sappington was raised by a single mother and knows the struggle of growing up in poverty in Cincinnati. He is currently a city councilman in Nelsonville. Both candidates will have the opportunity to introduce themselves through their opening statement. A special thanks to Dr. Bernier, our moderator tonight, who will now introduce the debate format for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maddie. My name is Dr. Julissa Bernier, and I'm from the Political Science Department here at Ohio University. 2 years ago, I was asked to moderate the debate between Representative Jay Edwards and his opponent, Sarah Grace, and I'm honored to be invited back here for this election cycle. Tonight's debate format will include 2-minute opening statements from each candidate. Each question will have a 2-minute timer for each candidate to answer, and then each candidate will have a 30-second rebuttal. Closing statements will be 2 minutes for each candidate. Again, the questions for this evening have been created by, hold on a second, a committee comprised of members from the College Democrats, College Republicans, and members of the Student Senate Governmental Affairs Commission. Ohio University seeks to provide opportunities for learning and the free exchange of ideas, including events such as this one. In the interest of ensuring an orderly event, audience members are asked to refrain from engaging in conduct that could disrupt the event. Anyone engaging in disruptive behavior will be subject to removal per Ohio University's policy on disruptive behavior. We will start with an opening statement from Representative Jay Edwards, who won the coin toss.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm going to stand just because we don't have microphones. So I just want to say thank you to the Student Senate. Thank you to the College Dems, College Republicans. Thank you. It doesn't seem like 2 years.
No, it doesn't.
So I just want to say, I guess in the opening statement, I was going to say all the things that was just previously said about me. But grew up in Nelsonville, which is 15 minutes down the road. It's funny. When I was in school, everyone knew where Nelsonville was because there wasn't that bypass that went around Nelsonville. Now everyone knew because they usually cursed it out because you had to go about 10, 15 mile an hour through the city of Nelsonville, and you go around it about 70 mile an hour. But I went to school here at Ohio University, got a scholarship to play football here, got my degree in mathematics. I grew up into a family of very hardworking blue-collar business owners that instilled hard work in me, and I guess I took that and used that in everything I've done in my life. I chose to run for this seat for a couple reasons. Number one, opportunity. I noticed that opportunity in Southeastern Ohio amongst my peers, amongst my friends growing up, wasn't the same as it was for others. We're in the middle of an opioid epidemic. It saddens me so much to look back and see people that I went to school with that I know were good people, how they grew up and to see where they're at now, some of them. Others have gone on and flourished. The other reason I ran for this seat is because I went out and explored the opportunity, explored elected officials here locally, and I couldn't find people to tell me who their state representative was. But yet most people will say that we're overlooked by Columbus. I found that as a big problem. If your local elected officials, local business leaders don't have a relationship with their state representative, how are you supposed to go to Columbus to represent them? This district is very big. It's 39 townships, covers four counties. And one of my main goals when running for this seat is to give the entire 94th district a voice. And a big part of that is right here at Ohio University. So I see my time's running out, and I want to say thank you. Thank you again for having us. Appreciate it.
I'm going to follow Mr. Edwards' lead and stand so everybody can see. So my name is Taylor Sappington. It was a very nice introduction. Thank you. You've got most of the details. I'm also from Nelsonville. I'm 27 years old. I'm on city council in Nelsonville, and I'm obviously running for the House of Representatives for Ohio. And so I just wanted to say real quick before we get started that, I just came from the vigil down at Hillel, and the terrible events that this country has seen in the last week, unfortunately, over the last year or so, we have to remember we're going to disagree strongly up here, up in front. And we probably disagree on each side of this room. I see a lot of Democrats on one side, a lot of Republicans on the other side. We have to remember that we're in this together, and we're trying to get things done. We're not trying to take each other out. We're not trying to have power for power's sake. We're not trying to just benefit our side, because there really is no side. And so I want to say that because it's important to know before we get into the real meat and potatoes of the discussion, that this is serious, but it's not so serious as some have taken it to the extremes that has happened recently. And so I want to talk quickly about one of the reasons why I'm running for state representative. I'm running for state representative because the state house, the state senate, the governor's mansion, all the states, statewide seats, and now, unfortunately, all of the seats on the Supreme Court are run by the same party. They're run by the same ideology. They're run by the same ideas. And unfortunately, despite this fact, despite supermajorities that can overrule any governor, especially a governor with presidential ambitions, can do whatever it wants. And it's really telling what they have done. And it's also more telling what little has been done. In a year where there's been less work in the state house than in many decades, due to ego battles and battles between leaders in Columbus. And so I'm running for state representative because I want to fight for new ideas, new energy, new passions. And if we're going to talk about ideas at debates like this, I'm running because we actually have to get it done in Columbus.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, the questions that I'm going to ask cover a wide variety of issues facing the 94th District, and we will begin with a question regarding the environment and industry. So question number 1, environment and industry. How do you plan to preserve Ohio's natural Appalachian beauty while maintaining strong support for industry and its workers? Who goes first? Okay. Okay, very good. And then we'll follow. All right.
Yeah.
Taylor?
So if I got the question right, it's preserving Appalachia.
How do you plan to preserve Ohio's natural Appalachian beauty while maintaining strong support for industry and workers?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is something very important, not just to who we are today, but who we have been in our past, what makes us who we are today in Appalachia, which is industry and preserving Appalachia for another day. And so I'll say a couple of things. We have to have good jobs. We don't have enough, we need more. We have to have good jobs that pay. We have to have good jobs with health insurance that doesn't have a $9,000 deductible, $10,000 deductible, because that's not insurance at all. It's just a money thing. We have to have good jobs that provide for our families so that folks like Mr. Edwards and I around the district can go to college. And so we have to fight for that. We have to fight for things like renewable jobs. Ohio used to lead the country in renewable jobs. And we have one of the top renewable companies in Athens, Ohio, Third Sun Solar, a place where I used to sell solar panels. It was totally cut off at the knees under this governor and under this, not this supermajority, but the beginning of the supermajority. And the jobs dried up. You don't have solar in Ohio like you did. You don't have 300% growth rates in solar and wind. You have 2% or 2% losses. And so we have to fight for renewable jobs. The other thing is we have to fight for environmental protections. This is an Appalachia, not just for us today. This is an Appalachia for everyone tomorrow. And so we have to have things, this is a really scary thing to some people in Columbus, but we have to have things like a royalty tax on drilling and extraction that goes directly back to local governments like Athens, Athens Township, Athens County. Because if you're going to use our resources and if you're going to dump your waste and if you're going to use our roads, the least you should do is pay for it. And so I'm going to advocate things like this in the State House. And I'm at 4 seconds, so I'm going to deal with my time, I guess.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. I guess first off, I think the question was around beauty, the beauty of Southeast Ohio, and how do we maintain industry? I love this question because, and I got this question a lot. I voluntarily joined the Trails Caucus in Columbus. We live in a beautiful area. How many people here in this room have been up to Hocking Hills? I mean, you see the results of that. Hocking Hills is 10 minutes, 15 minutes up the road, 20 minutes up the road. I guess I always relate things to Nelsonville. There's more visitors to Hocking Hills every year than Yosemite National Park. The industry around the Hocking Hills is something that we haven't even began to scratch the surface of. I talk to the Athens County Visitors Bureau about this all the time. Paige Aloft over there, and we talk about the tourism in southeastern Ohio, and we're seeing the beauty play off in that. We just recently opened up, just did a ribbon cutting on the Ori E. Anderson trail right behind the dairy barn, right back here down the road. I'm sure many of you have been to the dairy barn as well. We have Sells Park. We're talking about a very large investment in our national parks. We're trying to figure out a way to pay for it, but it's an 88-mile mountain bike adventure. We have the Adena Hocking Adena bike path. Extends 21 miles. We're talking about extending that all the way up to Logan. We get people here all the time that come to this area, spend their money. Tourism last year was $35 billion in the state of Ohio. I think, number one, industry is tourism. Industry is the beauty of southeastern Ohio, and I know that we have to expand that into other areas, but I think when we're just talking industry, tourism is industry, and we have to do more, and we've done a lot, but we're not even scratching the surface of the things that we can do to attract people here for our beauty and the things that we have here in this area. Well, I guess I have 17 seconds. I'll just say there was a comment made about the royalty on injection wells. The royalties are something that you get when you bring something out of the ground, not when you put something down into the ground. So.
Okay. Rebuttal. And Taylor, you get to start.
Okay, 30 second rebuttal.
Right? Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
Okay.
30-second rebuttal.
So I'll just say I agree about Hocking Hills. I agree about its beauty and the beauty of Appalachia. But what's really important for us here is to focus in and actually say, okay, so what's the state representative? What's the state house actually going to do about it? And so one of the things that I've advocated and will continue advocating is to make sure there's no drilling, extraction, auctioning, sales in our state parks. I'm not for dismantling state parks like Hocking Hills for profit today to take it away from kids tomorrow. I want folks to enjoy it after us.
Okay. Jay, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go back and talk about a little bit about the tourism industry in Ohio and how it's grown. We have $1 billion more from last year to this year. And I think I urge all of you to go over and talk to Paige Loss at the Athens County Visitors Bureau and talk about the tourism here locally and what we're doing to expand on the beauty and getting people here. We love when people come outside here, whether they're in the state or outside the state, and spend money here locally. Their tax dollars, that's money that goes to our schools, it's money that goes to our local government. So I urge you to go check these things out, stay up to date with the Wayne National Mountain Bike Trail that's getting ready to come, and we think we have a lot of progress.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is question number 2, and, okay, got it? Okay, question number 2 is on community, and Jay, you will start. Athens County is the most impoverished county in Ohio. What policies do you support that will help those struggling to make ends meet?
So this is a wide range of topics that goes into this problem. Poverty, I always like to look at it as not so much poverty, and we have generational poverty and generational welfare here, especially outside this university. When you get out down into Meigs County and outside the city of Athens, it even gets worse. We have major issues here, but I like to look at it as opportunity. And I talked about that a little bit in my opening speech, and I think it's a wide range of topics. Number one, I think when you talk about the opioid epidemic, it's greatly impacting this area. When you're seeing young people get involved in drugs, it's taking into their opportunity, and it's not giving them opportunity, and we're seeing them immediately go into poverty. It's taking a toll on the family. It's taking a toll on the entire community. Number two, I think we got to look at ways of allowing people, trying to give them the best opportunity to live the American dream. Whether that's going to our technical schools, whether that's going to our colleges. A lot of times we talk about scholarships and opportunities for kids to go to school. When I'm looking at that in higher education, and I hope we get into the affordability of higher education later, when I look at that, I look at more needs-based financial aid as opposed to just financial aid as a whole. Because when you're representing the 94th district, when you're representing Athens, Meigs, Washington, Benton County, we have a lot of poverty. We have a lot of first-time generation students. So we're constantly looking at ways of helping with that. And the one thing I will say, I guess, going back to the opening statement, how we get this done, we're not Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati. I started and I'm the chair of the Appalachian Caucus in Columbus. We work on all the Appalachian issues. The problems in Appalachia are very similar. Columbus is not Washington, D.C. It's not, Republicans and Democrats aren't fighting like they are in D.C. There's some that are, but not very many. We really get along. We work on a bipartisan level. The Appalachian delegation is meant to pull together the Republicans and Democrats in Columbus that are in the Appalachian region so that we can fight to take on the Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati of the world. And I don't mean to offend you because I know probably a lot of you are from there. But we need to take them on, and they have a lot more representation than us.
Okay, thank you. Taylor?
Yeah, so this is the question at the heart, at the beating heart of not just who we are, but what we'd like to be. And I say that because Appalachia has a history, a long history of poverty and struggle. And so I agree on one thing, which is that it's a very complex problem. It has many factors. One family that might be in poverty because of a massive medical bill might not have the same struggles as a family who's in poverty because mom and dad are hooked on a drug or dead because of the drug. And so we have to take a broad wraparound approach. We have to say that we're going to be bold on the drug crisis. We're actually going to put money where it belongs, not hoarded at state agencies to kind of boost the governor's presidential ambitions. And he can say, put a lot of money in the bank. Put our tax dollars to work and actually get folks the help that they need. Reform education. Make sure that education isn't based just on local property tax dollars. Make sure tuition at colleges doesn't cost $20,000 a year, $18,000 in debt, and $2,000 if you're lucky enough to be able to have the time to get a part-time job at the place you go to school. How about a hike in the minimum wage? We're really, there's a lot of folks at this college who are extremely lucky. And I meet them at the restaurant at Texas Roadhouse. And they come in with their parents. And we're very lucky to have these folks come into town and boost the economy of Athens and pay, a big $20 tip because they appreciate the help at the restaurant. But you know what? How about folks in Appalachia who are working at these restaurants, serving our parents, serving our families? How about they make a decent wage in the meantime when your parents are back home in Cleveland? Boost the wages. The State House can do that. A supermajority State House can do that today, tonight, before midnight if they wanted to, but they haven't. And it's just one of the reasons why I'm running, because we can see what they care about in Columbus. And I'd like to inject new ideas and some more time in the future.
Okay. Okay, Jay, rebuttal?
Yes. So I think that, number one, you can't take surpluses in state agencies and use them as campaign funds to run for president. But I don't know where we got that idea from. But I think when you're looking at things that we've done to combat poverty, I'm the one Republican in the state that stood up for Medicaid expansion. We're working on House Bill 336 to try to reinstate driver's license fees. We have major transit issues in this area. I'm working with Mayor Patterson, a Democrat, across the aisle. We're trying to get state money with ODOT to get grant funding for a transit program to go for buses from Albany to Nelsonville out to Federal Hocking coming through Athens. We're working on many, many projects right here in this region, across the aisle and with fellow Republicans to try to figure out the poverty issues and address them.
Okay, thank you. Taylor, rebuttal?
Yeah, so what I actually said was that he was hoarding money to help his budget numbers so that he could say, I saved a lot of money in Ohio. Governor Kasich has done that. He'll continue to do that as long as he's in office. But one of the other things, that was mentioned was Medicaid expansion. How about just a bold idea that people deserve health care and they deserve a chance to go to the doctor? How about in Ohio, one of the largest states in the country, you should just, if you have cancer, it's not a death sentence for your family's finances for your entire life. How about the chance to go to the doctor? Like I said, State House can do that today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question number 3, and Taylor will start, is on campus safety. How would you propose Ohio colleges reduce the number of sexual assaults and instances of harassment that occur on college campuses?
So this is an extremely tough question. One of the things that I'll say is that the legislature's role in this is probably to make sure that colleges have the funds and the resources for the programs, for the security. I don't know what they're actually called, but the little, I call it just the blue light for someone on campus who needs help right away. The legislature's best role is probably as the purse. But I will say, that I'm encouraged on this issue, despite all of the just terrible news on sexual assault in this country. And the reason I'm encouraged is because there seems to be some consensus in Athens that the increase in rape and sexual assault reporting in Athens specifically is not because of an increase in rapes, but because of an increase in trust and an increase in awareness and activism on this campus. Women feel that they can finally speak up. I don't feel yet that all women feel that way. As a leader in the region, I would make sure that people do feel that way, that there's a listening ear in Columbus, that there's a listening ear back at home, because we want a situation where these are reported, where they're investigated, and where consequences are brought forward. And so, I'm really encouraged. The news has been a little dire. There's been a lot of national and local news on sexual assault and rape in Athens and in this country. But I do feel we're at a place where, women finally feel like they can speak up, and men, as it pertains to other scandals. And so, I hope we continue along that process because it's vital, not just to the individuals, but to who we are as we go forward.
Okay, thank you. Jay?
So yeah, it is a tough topic, and it's something that sickens me every day when we pick up the paper and we see another one of these. Taylor is spot on when he says that it is the environment. We don't know if there's more sexual assault taking place, but I do think that we do live in a better environment, and a lot of that can be attributed nationally, but also some can be attributed right here to this university. I know Dr. Pina, Dr. Nellis, they take these things very seriously. We talk about them on a regular basis. We've also worked, it's encouraging to see the strong response by students. I saw, the march out here, the strong response by the university, the strong response by the local prosecutors, the strong response by local law enforcement that are working on these issues. We are working on issues in Columbus that surround this issue. House Bill 240, again, a bipartisan bill that I co-sponsored and worked on and passed through the committee that I serve on, Higher Education and Workforce Development, requires that institutions of higher education have policies, which most of them do, but we're trying to evolve those policies into the 21st century, and also make sure that these policies are given to each student every year annually, is at student orientation, is posted in prominent spots around the campus. We've also put $1.5 million additional funds into the campus reform bill, studying campus assaults. That this is new money in the biennium budget that we put in at $1.5 million. To what we're hoping is to get data so that we can come up with best practices. We also have a bill out there to change from domestic violence protection orders in the court system to change that so that you don't have to be married just to get protected, these order protections from the courts. But it can also go to if you're dating somebody, it can be dating protections. We are working actively on this because we realize that the problem is vast. It's going on everywhere, but it seems to be happening more on college campuses per capita when you look at the numbers. So it's something we're very sensitive about. We're constantly looking at these issues, and I'm proud to work with Democrats and Republicans alike in Columbus on both of these issues. All of the bills I just talked about, bipartisan DC legislation that I've postponed.
Okay, thank you. Taylor, rebuttal?
Yeah, I'll say as quick, hopefully in 30 seconds, you know, one of the major scandals at the State House this year was a state representative, newly elected, at a big money, big PAC corporation, you know, just a nasty kind of conference in Washington, D.C., and had basically sex with minors and was going after minors and was defended by members of this group. And so this, I got 10 seconds. I'm going to continue this story throughout the whole night. But this is part of a culture that we can change with our politicians. This is part of a corrupt, very wealthy, you know, a lot of money in this process. We have to take on the whole culture, the whole process. Sorry.
Okay, very good. Jay, rebuttal?
So, you know, I understand we're in the middle of an election. We're trying to get votes. I think it's pretty silly to try to say everything's going to be blamed on the State House here tonight, obviously. I think it's pretty silly to talk about something. I mean, the stuff that's being brought up by our legislator, number one, has nothing to do with people in this room. Number two, it was something that was done a long time ago, and he was immediately resigned. I don't know if he resigned or went away. I'm not in the know on that. But, you know, I think that this is too serious of a topic to try to use as a political agenda to fraud things. This is something that's very serious that we need to figure out real solutions on, not just talking about the problem.
Okay. All right, the next question is on higher education, and Jay will start. And the question is this: Ohio ranks 45th out of 50 states in terms of college affordability. What would you advocate for in the State House to reduce the cost of attendance for Ohio public colleges and universities?
So I wrote down some chicken scratch in my car when I was sitting out front. I guess I just want to, this is kind of statistics to talk about where we are now. There's 23 public college, or 14 public colleges in the state of Ohio, 23 community colleges, 78 private nonprofit, 30 proprietary schools, and 120 adult workforce developments, workforce centers. The Institution for Research on Higher Education says by 2025, 2/3 of Ohioans will need an associate's degree or more. And I guess before we start, it's always a pleasure. I love when I can brag about my district. OU has been a leader on predictability with the Ohio Guarantee and trying to sustain those prices year in, year out. And actually now it's a model around the entire state, but OU was first on that. And it's something that I constantly brag about. But let's talk about where we are that's good. Here we are in the last 10 years. This is from 2008 to 2018. When you look at states that have increased tuition and the amounts that they have increased, Ohio is bottom of the list. Now, that doesn't mean we're the cheapest. That means we're not increasing over a 10-year period. We've stayed the most stagnant over that 10-year period. That's a positive that we have to build on. But I'll be the first to tell you it's not enough. One of the many things I look at and what the biggest grants, there's many grants out there, but the biggest grant that I look at for the state share of instruction, we need to increase the state share of instruction, is the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. It's a need-based grant and sponsorship that goes to probably people in this room, some that are getting it. I urge you to go check out House Bill 750. 750, it's a bill that I am the primary sponsor of that increases the funding for OCOG, puts $5 million in that fund that can help you today if passed. We're working very hard on this, and this is something that's very important, especially when we're talking about needs-based financial aid, which is the majority of students in southeastern Ohio that are looking to go to college.
Okay, thank you.
So the problem in Ohio, unfortunately, is that we have a situation over the last 8 years where state funding, the share of instruction coming from the State House to colleges, campuses, and universities has dropped by huge amounts. They have said, we're not going to fund you any longer. They have cut taxes, not just a business tax that went to primary education. They have cut taxes on the upper brackets while raising the sales taxes on the rest of us. And so as they have cut taxes to the State House over the last 8 years, and they have cut the budget for higher education, they have the nerve to turn around and look at the state and say, I don't know what to do. Where do you want us to come up with the money? And so I believe, and I'm not the only one running for office this year, that the State House should reverse those tax cuts on the upper brackets. Those upper brackets should pay their fair share in Ohio State taxes. And this is an idea coming out of Youngstown. And the gentleman I heard it from said we should direct every dime of that money to colleges and universities so that they can bring down the cost to a place where it's called debt-free college. There will be a share of college for everybody, of college costs. But there will be no longer a system where the adults in the room look at the students in the room and say, you will have $60,000 in debt you pay for until you retire. And when you pay it off, you can now retire. It's not a system that makes sense. It doesn't help our economy. It doesn't even make sense for, you ask anyone on this campus, does that system make sense to them? It doesn't. You have professors who are rationing paper while we're paying $30,000 out of pocket or with student debt for college. It's not a system that works for us. And so I will advocate for a reform, partial reform of how education is funding, but also just going back to what it was before there was massive increases in debt for students. And I think that's an important point. We have to talk about what changed in Columbus and how we can.
Okay, thank you. Jay?
So there's a bipartisan effort, and I've talked about this, of trying to increase efficiencies, lower costs. But again, we agree on saying we haven't done a good enough job. I've talked about a couple of things that we are trying to do. If I was going to take the tax cuts and spend them anywhere, I think I would spend them on primary education. We want kids to be able to go to college. To take them and spend them on higher education and put them right into higher education, you're putting the cart way in front of the horse. The other thing is, if you're going to take those tax cuts and spend them anywhere, I think we heard earlier that we proposed a Medicare for all in the state of Ohio, in which case our tax rates will go through the roof. And you better take all the excess money and put it towards that. We still won't have enough money to pay for it, not even close.
Okay, Taylor?
Yeah, no, I actually don't agree whatsoever. So I don't think that equality in education is putting the cart before the horse. I think it's just a basic foundation of who we are as Americans and who we are as Ohioans. And so right now we have a system with widening inequality where some folks can go to college and many folks can't. And that only gets worse with every 4 or 5% increase in tuition and every 20, 30% increase in textbook costs. Those folks can't go to school any longer. And it's more and more, the numbers are growing. So this is a fairness and equality issue. This is for the horse. This is putting people first.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're shifting in question number 5 to incarceration. And Taylor, you get the first response. The question is, on Election Day, Ohioans will be voting in favor or against issue 1, which would reduce penalties for crimes of obtaining, possessing, and using illegal drugs in an effort to reduce prison populations. What is your position on this initiated constitutional amendment?
Yeah, so I'm actually leaning towards supporting issue. So that's sort of scary. The only person in the state who said that is Richard Cordray, the candidate for governor. But I'm leaning towards issue 1 because we must have criminal justice reform. And no matter how many, there was a comment earlier about saying things to get votes. No matter how much our politicians right here in Southeast Ohio fearmonger on issue 1, it doesn't change the fact that they've done almost nothing on the issue. It doesn't change the fact they've done almost nothing. And even if issue 1 passes, and there are problems with it, and there are problems with it, the State House can change things afterwards. They can't change the part that's actually in there, but they can change parts of the code to make it, say, on fentanyl, closer to what they would like to see in our criminal justice system. And so we have to approach this problem with a little bit of backbone, and we have to say what we've been doing since long before I've been alive, since there's other politicians in the room have been in office. Hasn't been working. We have locked up, there's 2 corrections officers in the room that I know of right now. Ask them afterwards. It's not working. It's easier to get drugs in prison than on the streets. And we have more prisoners in Ohio, 5 times the number than the year I was born, 1991. And there were 2 votes in the State House against criminal justice reform. 2 votes. One of them sitting here. So I will tell you, there's going to be a lot of fear-mongering on this question. But there's just opposition to criminal justice reform behind it. And the fear-mongering It's to just win an election. And so these people deserve better. These families deserve better. Folks who are addicted deserve better. I talked to a mother whose son went through the prisons in Marietta. Well, he was in prison in Lancaster. She lives in Marietta. She says, we have to fix this. It didn't work.
Okay, thank you. Jay?
Wow, there was a lot there. First off, let me say this. We're talking about a bill that I voted no on. I was one of the only ones to vote no. I stood by that no vote. That bill was trying to give the governor the access to sell off private lands, to take away good for private land, public lands that go to our correctional facilities in 2 areas to do away with good union jobs. And it's probably why I got the endorsement of the OCSEA and Taylor didn't. But when you go on top of that, add to that, when you talk about issue 1, we need prison reform. There's no doubt about it. We hear every day that we're throwing addicts in prison. We take addicts and throw them in prison. They come out full addict, or they come out full criminals. That's not what we want. We realize these people need treatment. It's happened in my family. I've lost a life over it. To say the State House is doing nothing on that's not true. We've taken F4 and F5 felons and given the option for them to go to drug courts now. If you take this away, including the Democratic prosecutor right here in Athens County, Keller Blackburn, who has aspirations to run for higher office in the Democratic Party one day, he is even against it. He has proposed a reform that we've actually sat down and began talking about, discussions. But to sit here and say we haven't done anything, we put $1 billion into the opioid problem. We all know we have an opioid problem. Let's talk about solutions. One of the first bills I worked on was around House Bill 167, around limiting access to, limiting the amount of prescription opioids that can be prescribed that eventually turn into access to Vivitrol. We're doing a lot. The other thing that really scares me is we have a possible legislator here that says that you can change laws that supersede the Constitution. You cannot add an amendment to the Constitution and then change laws to supersede the Constitution. You just cannot do that. And it actually should scare a lot of people in this room if you understand the Constitution and understand where that's at in the hierarchy of things. Issue 1 is a bad thing. The other thing that really worries me in this room is you have somebody, a potential legislator, that's had a long time to talk about issue 1 and they're still undecided. I'm adamantly no, it's going to put more felons, more drug people that need help, not the opportunity to get help through the drug courts and put them in our communities.
Okay, thank you.
So the truth of the matter is that $1 billion towards the drug crisis. I would like to talk about how much of that money went towards prisons. How much of that money went towards new prisons? How about the new massive facilities that are being planned in Ohio? How many new colleges do we have? How many new universities do we have? How many of our textbooks are covered like they were in high school? How many people don't have health care while we're funding prisons? We are locking people up, and that's how we're trying to solve the problem. And there are other ways to go about this.
Okay.
There are other ways, and we're doing it. The drug courts are recently new. We haven't seen the effects of them. Many know that it takes a long time to figure out the effects of the drug court and see the transition of how that's helping. Drug courts operate by telling people they can choose to go to prison or treatment. If you take away the prison sentence by not giving them not having the felony hanging over them, then they won't go to treatment. There's no way to put them there. And for somebody coming from local government, this is going to extremely increase the cost on our local governments. I care about local governments. I'm trying to find ways to give more money to our local governments. I don't want to drain their pockets so they can't fund streets and roads and bridges.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Right, our next question is in the area of the budget. And Jay, you will go first. Would you be an advocate for allocating funds from the state of Ohio Rainy Day Fund to local governments?
We passed this bill. I was a co-sponsor on this bill. Very proud of this. It was a bipartisan effort. Moving forward, any surplus in any state agency, half of that money is now going to go to a local road and improvement fund that will be distributed amongst the states. Now we're going in and looking at how we're going to distribute that. One thing you have to be very careful of is we want that to be distributed evenly to each county or each township of how we distribute that. We don't want to distribute it based on population. We don't want to distribute it on the amount of roads you have. We want to distribute it evenly, and we want to make sure we're getting our fair share. And again, that comes back to that Appalachian delegation bipartisan effort of how do we work together to make that happen. And we're discussing that right now. That being said, I think there's a bad misconception about the rainy day fund. It's okay to save money. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying there isn't things we should spend it on, but you come across everybody that's got all kinds of, they got K-12 issues, higher education issues, road issues, transportation issues. They always say, well, we'll just spend it out of the rainy day fund. The amount of money in the rainy day fund right now could operate state government. If state government shut down, could operate state government for 30 days. You think that's a long time? It's not very long. We talk about that being a crazy amount of money in that rainy day fund. I'm the first to say there's too much money in the rainy day fund. I have no problem going against my party or going against John Kasich. To be honest, I might look at ways of trying to go against John Kasich right now. But to save money is not a bad thing. And the bill that we most recently passed to try to go after infrastructure on the local level is a great bill. So to say that nothing's being done is just not true.
Okay. Okay, Taylor.
Yeah, so I am an advocate for allocating monies from the rainy day fund to local governments, particularly infrastructure projects. So as a city council person, I can tell you the one place we are lacking the most is money for streets and bridges and sidewalks. You have a $250,000 street budget, and a bridge repair is at minimum $2 million. It's an equation that doesn't work. And so I absolutely am an advocate for putting rainy day monies toward local government, particularly infrastructure projects. And the truth of the matter is that $2 billion is a lot of money. $2 billion is especially a lot of money when you're talking about infrastructure projects. And when it comes to the rainy day fund, it's of course okay to save money, for individuals to save money, for groups, for corporations, for organizations, for nonprofits. Of course it's okay to save money. But when you're talking about just up the road, at Wendy's or McDonald's, and folks are paying income taxes to the state from Athens, Ohio, this is their tax dollars you're talking about. To me, it's not an efficient system to take so much tax money and stuff it away when you have folks working for $8 an hour in the state of Ohio. And so absolutely the rainy day fund is good where it's at, but we should begin portioning out that money because it's our money. And we have infrastructure projects. The thing about infrastructure is called deferred maintenance for a reason, because if you just say, I just don't want to do it yet, it doesn't go away. It just becomes a $3 million bridge repair instead of a $2 million bridge repair. And when you're talking about you have a $250,000 local street budget, you're never going to get done. And then it's a $4 million street repair, and then a $5, and then it's closed. And so you have to have a massive injection of infrastructure dollars if we're ever going to catch up in the state to a point where the local governments can serve their taxpayers and fix the roads and the bridges themselves.
Okay, thank you. Rebuttal?
So it sounded like it's kind of an agreement of what bill we just passed that I co-sponsored. So I'll go on to something else. One thing that goes unmentioned when you talk about infrastructure on a local level is broadband. Another bill that we worked on, another bipartisan approach that we're working on in Appalachia. There's 300,000 households in Appalachia that don't have broadband right now. It might sound crazy to you. Is anybody in here from Appalachia? So 300,000 households that don't have reliable broadband. That plays into education. That plays into other things. We just passed the Ohio Development Broadband Grant, puts $100 million into those funds. There are funds out there to go after and to try to fund these projects to fix these issues. That's what we're really doing, finding solutions.
Okay, Taylor?
Yeah, so since it was brought up, and I'm given 30 seconds to talk about it, one of the areas we disagree on is broadband infrastructure and broadband regulation. So I actually believe it should be a public utility. I think it should be like AEP. You have to work with AEP to make sure your bills are paid and make sure the infrastructure is paid for. But you can't, the AEP just can't say, you live in Benton County, it's too expensive, we got to run, 3 miles of line, you got to figure out, call somebody else, call IGS or something. I believe broadband should be the same. It should be required. We should help with the companies that we're going to obviously do the legwork and such a thing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Our next question is in some ways related to the previous question, infrastructure. What do you think is the best way to fund improvements to Ohio roads and bridges? And Taylor, you begin.
The best way, well, I look at it this way. There's lots of ways to do it. There doesn't have to be just one way to fund. There doesn't have to be just one just the gasoline tax, and that's it. And we can't go outside of that. I don't believe that's a good way to look at it. I think it has to be a broad approach. So currently running for governor, Mr. Cordray has a plan to put a bond program on the ballot for voters to decide for themselves. Do you want to put billions of dollars worth of, into infrastructure to help localities get caught up with broadband, bridges, roads, sidewalks, water, sewer, and state parks? Can we help these folks get caught up on these massive costs so that, say, just like my town, our town of Nelsonville, if we have a street repair that's gone so long, it's now a $2 million street repair, and again, $250,000 to fix it, which means it ain't getting fixed. If the state can help with grants, with a massive infusion, help get that street fixed today, the annual cost of repairing that street might be $10,000, barring severe weather calamity. And so I actually am a big believer, a massive infusion into infrastructure jobs. Make sure the jobs are spread around. They're not just contractors, no offense, to Cleveland, from Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati. Make sure they're local jobs, local contractors getting work done, and make sure they're also in localities, not just state highways, state agencies. And I think that's a great way to get the state caught up. It's a great way to bring our infrastructure in the 21st century, which we are far behind in. If you go to many of our cities, the public transportation is in dire need, and not just in our cities, but down here. You have folks who are interviewed by the news who said they don't go to their doctor's appointment, even though they have a disease, because they can't afford the trips to the doctor in Appalachia. We have a massive transportation need statewide.
Okay.
So it's just kind of odd to me where I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Just a second ago, it was the rainy day fund. Now we're going with Richard Cordray's plan. Obviously, Richard Cordray isn't the same to spend all the rainy day fund on infrastructure. Richard Cordray's plan, while it is, I'm not saying I'm fully against Richard Cordray's plan. His plan is trying to max out the credit card for Ohioans. We've seen what that's like in times of economic distress. We don't know when another downturn is going to come. I'll sit here and be the first to say a lot of people, when you hear Governor Kasich and others talk about about Ted Strickland and 89 cents in the rainy day fund, and now it's over $2 billion. I'm the first to say I understand that the reason was it was tough economic times. So we need to prepare for that. That's why it's okay to have a rainy day fund. I'm not sitting here as a proponent to raising the gas tax in Ohio, but I think it's important to understand the substance of understanding how we fund our roads and bridges, other than just saying we want to do what Richard Cordray does. We want to spend the rainy day fund. Back in 2003 was the last time the gas tax was raised. John Kerry, spelled with a C, not a K, not the guy that ran for vice president. He was in the state legislature from down in Wellston. He's now the chancellor of higher education. Probably some people in this room have met with him and sat with him, especially student senate members. The last time the gas tax was raised, he played a critical role in making sure that those funds were distributed evenly amongst every single township in the state of Ohio, regardless of their population or amount of roads. We have 1,250 miles of roads in both federal, state, and local roads right here in Athens County. It's important to get somebody that understands the issues so that we're not just saying we need more roads, but we're also diving into the substance, and we know that we're fighting for getting our fair share. And I think that I'm a good person for that because of the bipartisan approach and the Appalachian delegation banding together to take on Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati.
Taylor? Hold on. Ready?
Yeah, I think, I hope my answer was clear that I was actually saying more than one route. I wasn't saying one or the other. I wasn't saying just pick one. I was saying let's do both. Let's find ways to fund our infrastructure because it's a massive issue. It's an expensive issue. I talked about Nelsonville's budget just to explain that I'm sure in Ohio, in 1 year, there's probably not enough money in the state budget to fix all the infrastructure problems. But you have to start. You have to start now. You have to say it's a priority. So I was saying, do both.
Thank you.
So both that's being discussed is we're going to spend all our access funds while also maxing out the credit card. I know many of you probably go uptown on a Saturday night. I don't think you'd want to spend all the funds in your bank and max out your credit card right before you went uptown. It would make for a pretty boring Saturday night. So I don't think that's the right way to go for Ohio. I think in taking the rainy day fund the way that we're doing and taking half the funds and putting into a local government improvement fund, I think exploring ideas of possible raising the gas tax. We're also in limb a little bit with what the federal infrastructure package is going to do and whether they're going to raise the federal gas tax.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this next question begins with J, and it's women's health care. The Ohio legislature has made several attempts in the past 5 years to implement a fetal heartbeat bill, the most recent attempt being in June of 2017. If passed, this bill would prohibit abortions if a heartbeat is detected, usually around 6 to 8 weeks. How would you react if this bill appeared on the House floor during your term?
So this is a really tough issue for me. Probably the toughest issue I work on in Columbus. And I'll be the first to tell you this is not why I ran for office. I didn't run for office to work on abortion issues. I ran for office to work on funding for K-12, work on higher education issues, local government, opportunity, generational poverty, generational welfare. Those are why I chose to run for office. Individually, I'm pro-life. I choose not to work on those issues in Columbus, but unfortunately, sometimes legislators bring those to us, and we have to take votes on them. I vote pro-life, but I also stand in the majority room with people that I greatly disagree with and call people out for trying to be pro-life, but also trying to take away the safety net for people. Of only caring about a child when it's in the womb, but also trying to cut Medicaid and food benefit programs for these kids. You cannot do that. And I think you need a voice in that majority room. Otherwise, if don't have somebody elected that's in that majority to be that voice, you have no voice in the room whatsoever. And I think I've been very successful on some of these bills of trying to include amendments and include things that would not take away that safety net. And I think that's something that is very important because, again, we have a lot of hypocritical, I'll call them legislators, many of my colleagues that want to take away that safety net while forcing a woman to have a child.
Taylor?
Just want to make sure I don't cheat on time there.
No.
So there are a couple, let me just say I have a lot of issues with that answer. So one of them is, the quote, why, somebody goes to Columbus to work, why I went to Columbus to work. I don't go to work on choice. Well, it doesn't matter, right? This is a democracy. Voters send you to work on what they say work on. And so I'm, of course, pro-choice. I was raised by strong-willed, single mom in the room. She may blush. She does every time I mention her. And, she taught me on more than just choice, on economic issues, on a list, on healthcare issues. Women can choose for themselves. And right now, we have a state house. Let's be perfectly honest. We have a state house that has been featured nationwide for being one of the most radical voices on a woman's right to choose in the country. And there are 4 legislators that were singled out by the local Athens News today. And one of them sits in this room, and I'm not a legislator. Women send men to work on women's issues when they can't send a woman so that we can make it easier for them, not so that we can get in the way. How about the expiring paint tax on women's feminine hygiene products? How about crisis pregnancy centers? There's one legislator in the room that has donated campaign money to a crisis pregnancy center. And again, I'm not a legislator. On choice, we have to stop the most radical state house in the country on a woman's right to choose. And it doesn't matter who's in the majority and who's not the majority. When it comes to just standing up and speaking up for people in your district, if I am the 48th legislator in the minority, just barely the minority, I will proudly say I voted against radical abortion bills because it's not just who I am, it's who the district is. It's who the women of this district are. It's their health care needs. It's not me, it's not us. We have to stand up for Southeast Ohio.
Okay, thank you. Jay, rebuttal?
Yeah, so, if we're going to talk about the State House and blame the State House for everything on a partisanship basis, then I guess we got to give Republicans full benefit for protecting Medicaid expansion right now. We still have that in Ohio. We still fought against right to work legislation in the state of Ohio. We still have the right to unionize here in the state. We protect prevailing wage and project labor agreements. So we got to get the State House those benefits as well. Again, this is something that I didn't go to Columbus to work on. That's something Taylor said in our last 2 debates at Tri-County Vocational School and at the Nelsonville Library. And now it seems he's changing his tune in this room. But those are things that I don't go to Columbus to work on. I'm here to work on issues facing Southeast Ohio.
Okay, thank you. Taylor?
No, I don't think it's changing the tune on anything. I think that what we're seeing is that there's just stark contrast. There's a very clear choice on this issue. Not just choice, I mean in general on women's issues. You know, I was talking in Marietta last week with a group of professional women who have lobbied the State House, and they said the questions they get are so insulting, so terrible, it embarrasses them to go to the State House. But they go anyway because these issues are important to them, and they'll keep fighting for them. And that's something I'll do in the State House.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, our next question, this is question number 9, discrimination. And it will begin with Taylor. Would you support proposed House Bill 160, the Ohio Fairness Act, that would prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity or expression?
Yes, I would. So I would support any bill that prevents or fights, because it's hard to prevent, but fights discrimination in the state of Ohio. And, you know, as somebody with that opinion, I think we're very fortunate that it's not just, you know, citizens, it's not just voters who are taking this stance. We now are in a position where corporate America, the business community, landlords are coming along and saying, listen, this isn't us, this isn't who we want to be. And you've seen high-profile cases where, again, radical state houses across the country, I'm thinking in particular Indiana, North Carolina, and Texas, have proposed bills that were discriminatory or attacked bills that take on discrimination. And you had massive players in the American economy and politics saying, listen, guys, get your heads out of here. You know what? We have work to do. And so in the State House, I will, of course, fight efforts for any of those terrible bills that I'm alluding to. I was, you know, I'm fortunate in a way, as a member of the LGBT community, I'm fortunate in many walks of my life, I haven't faced serious discrimination. You know, I ran for city council in my town. I didn't expect discrimination, I didn't get it, and I came in first place out of 5 candidates. So I'm lucky, but I know I'm not everyone, and I'm aware of that fact. There are folks who do face discrimination. There are folks who face beatings. There are folks who face killings. We just laid a gentleman to rest in Washington, D.C. who was killed simply because he was gay. And so this is a problem. This is a problem today where a man can walk into a Kroger and kill a black couple in Kentucky, where another man can walk into a synagogue in Pittsburgh, not that far from here, and kill members just because they're Jewish. So we face this. This is a serious moment for us. And we have to, like I said earlier, we have to be bold. We have to support bold legislation, and we have to stick up for our people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so House Bill 160, I guess the way it works, and just to be fair, bills work through committee, and there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of input. There's a lot of problems with bills, not the intent. Sometimes there's a negative intent that you don't always see. Sometimes there is things on the back end of the bill. Sometimes there's things like overlapping language in the bill that overlaps with the Ohio Revised Code. The intent of this bill, I'm all for. The Ohio Chamber of Commerce is for it. They've come out and they're proponent of the bill. The Ohio Society of CPAs are for it. They've come out and are proponent of the bill. They say it's going to bring business here. All it's taking is gender equality and LGBTQ issues and bring them up with the already discrimination laws that we have in the state. And again, the chamber and CPAs are both for it. So I don't see any reason. That if we're doing this for business savvy and they're claiming it's business. But again, it's a little partial because I don't sit in that committee and don't know the ins and outs of the bill. I know Nikki Antonio's endorsing it. If that is the intent, is bringing that up with the regular discrimination laws in the state right now, I'm all for it. Going back to a thing that was on the last question of the pink tax, I'm so glad that got brought up. I'm working with the Democrat legislator Bridget Kelly right now on reinstating that the pink tax. She introduced the bill originally. We're actually looking at possibly changing that into a thing to cover more than just originally. Right now it's for women's feminine hygiene products. We're looking at possibly expanding that even into diapers. For children, if you're below certain poverty levels, we're looking at real issues, real ways of trying to help women, especially single mothers, here in the state of Ohio. So I'm so glad that got brought up, and
Okay. Okay, Taylor?
Yeah.
For rebuttal.
One thing I'll say is that, you know, it's nice the Chamber of Commerce endorsed that. I'll say that on some issues, the Chamber is not always right. And so it comes down to what you believe. not just what the chamber wants. And so it's important to talk about values, not just who's endorsed the bill. It is important to getting a bill passed, and I'm very proud of the coalition that's working to pass it. But it's also important about what happens when those folks aren't endorsing it. What happens when it's controversial? What happens when Fox News is covering it? Where do you stand?
Rebuttal?
Absolutely, he's 100% right. And he talks a lot about corporate donations. He doesn't accept PAC donations. Go look at my voting history. I can stand by every single vote. The Chamber of Commerce, one of their biggest issues is making Ohio a right-to-work state. I'm endorsed by every labor union across the state. I obviously don't care what the chamber tells me to vote on or how they tell me to vote. AT&T, they're a supporter of mine. They've given me a little bit of money. I vote no on their issues 98% of the time in the State House. Why? Because I don't agree with them. I don't agree that we can raise rates on our most vulnerable population in order to increase services out there. So I don't go by who supports me or who's endorsing bills.
Okay. Okay, our next question. Jay will start it. It's K through 12. How would you propose handling the issue of public funding going towards charter schools?
Yeah, so this is a big topic. Obviously, everyone knows ECOT. It's like ECOT's the devil. And I'll just go ahead and say ECOT was something that me as a legislator, I've been up there for not even 2 years. I've never really had to deal with. You know, all those rules and regulations were passed. ECOT started. They went through and had their ordeal. Obviously, they weren't held to the same standard. They took a lot of money from our public schools. And it's something that we need to make sure doesn't happen again. But there are kids that don't learn in a traditional setting. So the idea of having home-based schools or charter schools are a good thing. We just got to make sure they're held to the same standards, and they can't be funded out of the pockets of our public schools. That being said, I've taken part in a school funding caucus here in the state of Ohio. It's bipartisan. Representative Cupp and Representative Patterson are chairing that. It's a bipartisan effort. I've been so active, and it's kind of an ongoing joke because whenever they meet in Columbus, the 94th district, there'll be 60 people in the room. 30 of them are from the 94th district. I've been so active in that committee. I'm so happy this morning we got that committee to come right down here to Athens School, to the Chancey ESC, Athens Meigs ESC building, and perform their school funding caucus. We have people here, superintendents and treasurers here from the entire state of Ohio. That means a great deal to get them down here. They were commenting on the hills and the beauty that we have here in this area. But it also means a great deal so that they can see our schools and they can see what it's like. We're not the same. You know, there's even a difference between poverty-stricken schools in urban areas and poverty-stricken schools in Appalachia. So it's great to get people to come down here to this area. And I think when you talk to fellow legislators, you realize that they see exactly how passionate I am and how much I work with our local school districts right here to figure out ways that we can fund our schools properly and fund them better.
Okay, thank you. Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, we're set.
So I'll say there's several things to unpack here. The one is that we disagree a little bit on framing here, in tone and priority, I think. So when it comes to not having dealt with ECOT scandal that broke across the state, there's lots of people dealing with the ECOT scandal right now in Ohio. There's lots of people that will continue dealing with it and the repercussions from now on. So our job as legislators is to deal with it today. You know, ECOT may not be open today, but it doesn't mean that we can't change the state house. It doesn't mean we can't change the rules, and we can't hold people to account who deserve it, quite frankly, as a state legislature. And so one of the things I'll say is that for anyone who doesn't know, ECOT defrauded students, now unemployed teachers, and taxpayers to the tune of $200 million, just about $8 million in Athens County. Massive amounts of money by taking public tax dollars from our local schools, putting it into their for-profit system, a system, mind you, that was failing half its students, and whose students who were coming out to the workforce and into the college sphere with no preparation because somebody at the top was too busy buying condominiums around the state at some of the wealthiest locations around Ohio. This is fraud, and a legislature can do something about fraud. We can empower the auditor to do more to audit for-profit educational systems. Of course we want avenues for students who have a different pathway to an education. Nobody's arguing that. What we're arguing is that the auditor should have the power to go after these folks. Prosecutor should have the power to go after these folks. The legislature can give them that power. And then we can make sure that if we're going to hand out money, it doesn't come from a local school board. It comes from the state. And when it comes from the state, we can have tighter restrictions, and we can look at where this money is going. And we can say, in a for-profit school, we want to know how are your students doing and where's the money going.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if you look, the auditor and the treasurer and the auditor and the attorney general have gone after these. That's why ECOT is no longer in existence, and it's all kind of been going on while I've been up there. That being said, there's a reason, and you have to understand school funding to understand why ECOT negatively affects Athens more than it does Trimble or a poorer district, and that goes to the state share index. Median household income and 3 years property taxes goes back, and the more wealthy you are, the worse an ECOT student leaving affects you. You really have to have a great grasp on the school funding formula to understand how we're going to fix these problems.
Okay, thank you. Taylor, rebuttal?
Yeah, so I'll say the problem with the system is that the attorney general, who is running to be our governor, only cared about ECOT in the sense that he cared where the donations were coming from and the massive checks that him and his party were getting from the owners of this school. Massive checks. They were getting paid from taxpayer dollars, mind you. And so he only even knew what ECOT was as it pertains to his office, the Attorney General's office, when he was suddenly running for governor. And he said, crap, this is a problem. We have to make it look like we're suing ECOT. But ECOT's gone now. That is the problem. ECOT is gone. They got away with it. We can pass new rules to make sure somebody in the future doesn't get away with the same thing.
Okay, thank you. Question 11, bipartisanship. And this will begin with Taylor. In the 94th House District, the Athens area trends heavily Democratic, while other areas in the district are moderate to heavily Republican. What issue positions have you taken that are more in line with that of the opposite political party?
That's a great question.
It is a good one.
So one of the things I'll say is that one of the people I met with first, if not the first person I talked to when considering this run, was Debbie Phillips, who was our representative until 2016. And one of my questions was, how do you do the job? And of course, she asked me what specifically how do you do the job? I said, so you have Athens County, and more specifically, you have the 457, you have the Athens zip code. That's extremely Democratic. And you have areas down in Meigs County that are 90-10 Republican. How do you represent an area like that? And so what she told me was extremely instructive. And by the way, I thought she was a great representative. I appreciated the digs at her. I thought it was a few debates, but I thought she was a great representative. I thought plenty of people knew her. And so, she says you have to focus on issues where you can get bipartisan support. You have to fight on the issues like we were talking about earlier, pro-choice, pro-life. You have to fight on those issues. They're 15% of your time in the State House, and you have to say, this is what I believe and this is how I vote. On everything else, you have to say infrastructure spending. Do Republicans in Parma or Westerville or Upper Arlington care about infrastructure and potholes and sidewalks? Of course they do. Do Democrats in Athens care about sidewalks and bridges? Of course they do. Does everybody want a 21st century infrastructure program? Of course they do. We just disagree slightly on how to get there. And so you have to work on issues like infrastructure, like broadband expansion, where there is broad agreement, like economic development. How about economic development that betters the worker, not just the top tax bracket? We can work on these things together because everyone wants stronger workers. Everyone wants better infrastructure. Everyone wants the damn potholes to go away. You go to some places around this country, not many. You go to some places, there's not nearly as many potholes. And it's because they fund their system.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess if I understood the question correctly, it is what do you agree more with the opposing party, not what we both agree upon together, or not what you agree upon with the
Right.
party.
What issue positions have you taken that are more in line with that of the opposite political
Yes.
party?
I think I could go on and on about this. I'm not pigeonholed by anybody. Every vote I take in the State House, I can stand by. I'm the one Republican that's voted against all the Republicans many times. I don't know any other Republican that can stand here in front of you and tell you that today. One that sticks out in my head was in requiring people to put photos on their food benefit, SNAP benefit cards, which would require them to go to the office, have transit, all these issues that most poor people or people living in poverty aren't able to have. But I could go on and on about things that I'm more in line with Democrats are than I am Republicans. Unions, I'm very union based. I'm endorsed by virtually all the unions that represent people in Southeastern Ohio, the OCSEA, the Ohio Education Association, AFSCME, the SEIU, a lot of the private unions, plumbers and pipe fitters, your laborers, your carpenters, your electricians, sheet metal workers, iron workers. I'm endorsed by all the unions in the state of Ohio, which tends to be more of a Democratic belief. But the way my mind works, I'm able to view those and realize it's more of a Democratic belief. But I also don't spend a lot of time thinking about bills and are they Democrat or Republican. I like to base my views on right and wrong as opposed to right and left. I'm the one Republican that publicly came out for Medicaid expansion and 700,000 Ohioans that are taking advantage of that. But I do find it kind of, we've sat here, we talked about reaching across the aisle, we realize Republicans probably are going to lose a supermajority, but still have the majority in Columbus. And I'd love to hear Mr. Sappington's take. I didn't hear one thing come out of his mouth that he agreed more with Republicans on than Democrats. And I don't know how you're going to get much stuff done. I think that is some of the same problem. I got along with Debbie Phillips just fine. Some of the same problem is she wasn't able to reach across the aisle. That's why she passed one bill in 8 years.
Thank you. Taylor, rebuttal?
Yeah, so I'll say, one of the issues that I'm most proud to have worked on in the city of Nelsonville is reforming the city's budget. And so we had a massive budgetary crisis coming our way. $900,000 we're losing every year on a budget of $4 million. You do the math, we didn't have much time. With the help of everyone in the room, 6 out of the 7 council members, we voted to pass a balanced budget ordinance, force the city to balance its budget. I think it's a great example of an issue that Democrats talk a lot of gain, but we should talk about more.
Okay, thank you.
Again, you heard more bipartisan there than you heard anybody saying that they agree more with Republicans on an issue than Democrats. What you're getting is what we're having in this election, and I understand there are Democrats and Republicans in the room. What you have is somebody that does not do things on a partisanship basis. They look at things versus right and wrong and not right and left. I don't fall in line with my party all the time. I think that's the biggest problem in politics, especially in DC, but some in Columbus. I think we need somebody, and to represent this diverse district, you have to have somebody that's willing to go right and wrong and not willing to be partisan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and question number 12, campaign funding, and Jay will be the first to answer this question. What do you think the sources of your campaign funds say about your candidacy?
I love this question. I've gotten, again, I'm so fortunate to be endorsed by so many unions in the state of Ohio, which again goes back to my bipartisan effort. Not very often do you see a Republican endorsed by the Ohio Education Association, the SEIU, AFSCME, OCSEA, the OPSE, Ohio Association of Public School Employees, also endorsed by the private unions. They're endorsing all the Democratic statewide, and they're also endorsing me. The other thing is I get a lot of money from both inside the state. 98% of my money comes from inside the state of Ohio with people living here, individuals living here, working here, doing business here. I also get a lot of money from people living in the 94th district, local business leaders, local community members. I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud to go to Columbus. I'm also very proud if you look at my record and see some of the PACs that give me money, some of the organizations that give me money, even some of the labor organizations that give me money. You'll see that I don't vote with them based on the money they give me. AT&T has given me money. AT&T gets upset with me all the time because I don't vote on their issues. I am not pigeonholed by anybody. People support me and my campaign based on my character and the idea of what I'm running on. Not to pass a bill or not pass a bill or to get my vote or not get my vote. It's something that I want to make sure to continue and make sure to work in a bipartisan manner to get things done, and money is somebody that's buying into my character, not buying my seat.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll say a couple things because this is, my most passionate issue on this campaign. We started this campaign, we made a pledge, we will take no corporate PAC whatsoever. Not just in the campaign, because I've actively called out Democrats, not just in Ohio, around the country. They say, I won't accept corporate PAC money in this campaign, and they win their office, and they immediately start taking corporate PAC money, which defeats the point. The point was, you don't take any corporate PAC. And so, I am also super proud of my donors. And in fact, I'm extremely proud of one labor union, the Smart Labor Union. That's actually their name. They're also the Smart Labor Union. But they endorsed this campaign alongside of 1,200 individual donors at an average contribution of under $60. And we have raised $80,000 for a state house race. off of small donors. There is nobody in the state of Ohio or this country who can say, we were there when you were the underdog, Taylor. Now, can you vote for us now that you're in the State House? Not one person, not one corporation. I think it's so important we talk about the system in Ohio. We have the worst campaign finance limits in this country of states that have campaign finance limits. $12,707.79. Nobody buys something for $13,000 and doesn't expect something for it. Nobody. I don't care who you are, nobody. And so I'm a believer in a state like Montana, a massive state where you can't campaign door to door except for in a few areas. You have to run radio, TV, newspaper, mailers, expensive campaigns for a sparsely populated state. They have a $100 limit per person, per group, per organization. I'm absolutely in favor of that because the system is corrupted. You lost $200 million in tax dollars to ECOT because the owner was buying legislators. That's just a fact. They did not support accountability because they were donors to their campaign. We know this happens, and we have the ability to change it.
Okay. Jay, rebuttal?
He's talking about a lot of other people. He can't point to one issue that I voted on that would be from my donors or against my donors because he can't, because I'm not pigeonholed by anybody. But I think it's interesting to talk about corporation and corporate donors. Right here is a contribution that was made from Taylor to a guy in Malibu, California, a guy worth $100 million. Who has a corporation. He's actually a pretty disgusting individual if you look him up on Twitter and the stuff that he said. He gives Taylor money one day for $3,355. Taylor turns around and writes it to the corporation for $3,353.88. That seems like a corporate donation, and Taylor gets a video out of it from the corporation. There's an investigation going on that right now.
Taylor, rebuttal?
Yeah, let's just say a few things. There's not, actually. We talked earlier about trying to get votes. It's a pretty interesting tactic. We have somebody called the Boyches, billionaires from Florida. Jay was recently criticized on Facebook. He said, Jay, you take money from these billionaires. All they care about is extraction from Ohio. Why do you take this money? He got into a Facebook argument. He probably blocked 200 people in the middle of it. And then that same week, the Boyches wrote him $5,000 just out of spite. The topic comes up and they get $5,000. Come on.
Okay, here's our closing question. And Taylor, you'll lead off. What do you admire most about your opponent?
Yeah, so we got this question the other day, and Tri-County Career Center. And one thing I'll say is that, I wasn't as good at football as Jay was. And we both went to the same high school for a year, about 9 months. And so, I was always glad to be on one side of the sidelines and not the other. And I think there's a lot of folks around Southeast Ohio who could say the same. That takes tenacity and it takes, purpose. And I was much better at band. I'm just saying I was much better at saxophone than right tackle, where I ostensibly played football. So that's one thing. Another thing is that, I appreciate the amount of events attended. I appreciate the social media presence. We Democrats often make fun of Republicans for being maybe a little old-fashioned when it comes to campaigning and social media. And that's one thing you can't say is my opponent is very 21st century when it comes to campaign methodology. And so I respect that because I think social media is the future, not just of our economy, but of our politics and of our lives. So yeah, there's a couple.
Okay, thank you. And Jay?
Yeah, so I feel like I need to go back now. The Boyces did write me a check. The Boyces have business in the state of Ohio, and the Boyces president is a guy that graduated from Ohio University. His son plays hockey here at the university. They have business here. I never then wrote a check to this corporation after that. He's the owner of that company. That being said, I think that we did get this question the other day, and I think that Taylor is somebody that really wants what's best for Southeastern Ohio. I think his heart is in the right place. I think he's really done a good job in this campaign. And I truly think that win, lose, or draw, I hope that if I'm able to be on top, which, I don't know how likely that is, but if I'm able to, I hope that Taylor chooses to run again and vice versa. Because I think that it does produce a lot of very good topics, a lot of very good conversations. And I really hope that that we end this thing in a nice, clean manner. I feel like I have done a lot to try to keep it clean as much as I can. And I think Taylor's done some to keep it clean as well. But I think that overall, Taylor really, his heart is really in a good place, and he wants what's best for our area.
Okay. Taylor, some rebuttal?
I don't think we need rebuttal on that.
Well, I was sticking to the format.
Yeah, right.
But
No, I'm good.
okay, both of you are good? Okay, that was our final question. Let me just thank you, both of you, the candidates, for coming out tonight. Everyone here really appreciates that. I want to thank again the hard work of the college Republicans, the college Democrats, and the OU Student Senate. And I want to thank our audience for coming out as well. Thank you very much for a nice evening. Thanks so much. You were good.
It's nice to close that.
You know, it makes me nervous to keep time.
Oh,
Like
really?
when I do it for student groups, you know, in my class, I have a hard time like concentrating on the presentation.
Yeah, that was.
I'm so busy looking at the